Chapter 2. The Green-Eyed Cat. And here's to the hound, with his nose unto the ground. Drink, puppy, drink. Some people hold that breakfast is the best meal of the day. Others, less robust, hold that it is the worst, and that of all breakfasts in the week, Sunday morning breakfast is incomparably the worst. The party gathered about the breakfast table at Riddlesdale Lodge held, if one might judge from their faces, no brief for that day miscalled of sweet reflection and holy love. The only member of it who seemed neither angry nor embarrassed was the Honourable Freddie Arbuthnot, and he was silent, engaged in trying to take the whole skeleton out of a bloater at once. The very presence of that undistinguished fish upon the Duchess's breakfast table indicated a disorganized household. The Duchess of Denver was pouring out coffee. This was one of her uncomfortable habits. Persons arriving late for breakfast were thereby made painfully aware of their sloth. She was a long-necked, long-backed woman who disciplined her hair and her children. She was never embarrassed, and her anger, though never permitted to be visible, made itself felt the more. Colonel and Mrs. Marchbanks sat side by side. They had nothing beautiful about them but a stolid mutual affection. Mrs. Marchbanks was not angry, but she was embarrassed in the presence of the Duchess, because she could not feel sorry for her. When you felt sorry for people, you called them poor old dear, or poor dear old man. Since obviously you could not call the Duchess poor old dear, you were not being properly sorry for her. This distressed Mrs. Marchbanks. The Colonel was both embarrassed and angry. Embarrassed because, upon my soul, it's very difficult to know what to talk about in a house where your host has been arrested for murder. Angry in a dim way, like an injured animal, because unpleasant things like this had no business to break in on the shooting season. Mrs. Pettigrew Robinson was not only angry, she was outraged. As a girl she had adopted the motto stamped upon the school notepaper, Quo conque honesta. She had always thought it wrong to let your mind dwell on anything that was not really nice. In middle life she still made a point of ignoring those newspaper paragraphs which bore such headlines as "Assault upon a schoolteacher at Cricklewood. Death in a pint of stout. For a kiss. She called him Hubbykins." She said she could not see what good it did you to know about such things. She regretted having consented to visit Riddlesdale Lodge in the absence of the Duchess. She had never liked Lady Mary. She considered her a very objectionable specimen of a modern independent young woman. Besides, there had been that very undignified incident connected with a Bolshevist while Lady Mary was nursing in London during the war. Nor had Mrs. Pettigrew Robinson at all cared for Captain Dennis Cathcart. She did not like a young man to be handsome in that obvious kind of way. But, of course, since Mr. Pettigrew Robinson had wanted to come to Riddlesdale, it was her place to be with him. She was not to blame for the unfortunate result. Mr. Pettigrew Robinson was angry, quite simply because the detective from Scotland Yard had not accepted his help in searching the house and grounds for footprints. As an older man of some experience in these matters, Mr. Pettigrew Robinson was a county magistrate. He had gone out of his way to place himself at the man's disposal. Not only had the man been short with him, but he'd rudely ordered him out of a conservatory, where he, Mr. Pettigrew Robinson, had been reconstructing the affair from the point of view of Lady Mary. All these angers and embarrassments might have caused less pain to the company, had they not been aggravated by the presence of the detective himself, a quiet young man in a tweed suit, eating curry at one end of the table, next to Mr. Murbles, the solicitor. This person had arrived from London on Friday, had corrected the local police, and strongly dissented from the opinion of Inspector Crakes. He had suppressed at the inquest information which, if openly given, might have precluded the arrest of the Duke. He had officiously detained the whole unhappy party on the grounds that he wanted to re-examine everybody, and was thus keeping them miserably cooped up together over a horrible Sunday. And he had put the copping stone on his offences by turning out to be an intimate friend of Lord Peter Wimsey, and having, in consequence, to be accommodated with a bed in the gamekeeper's cottage, and breakfast at the lodge. Mr. Murbles, who was elderly and had a delicate digestion, had travelled up in a hurry on Thursday night. He had found the inquest very improperly conducted, and his client altogether impracticable. He had spent all his time trying to get hold of Sir Impey Biggs, K.C., who had vanished for the weekend, leaving no address. He was eating a little dry toast, and was inclined to like the detective, who called him sir, and passed him for butter. "Is anybody thinking of going to church?" asked the Duchess. "Theodore and I should like to go," said Mrs. Pettigrew Robinson, "if it's not too much trouble. Or we could walk. It's not so very far." "It's 2.5 miles good," said Colonel Marchbanks. Mr. Pettigrew Robinson looked at him gratefully. "Well, of course you will come in the car," said the Duchess. "I am going myself." "Are you, though?" said the Honourable Freddie. "I say, won't you get a bit stared at, what?" "Really, Freddie, does that matter?" "Well, I mean to say, these bounders about here are all Socialists and Methodists." "If they are Methodists," said Mrs. Pettigrew Robinson, "they will not be at church." "Won't they?" retorted the Honourable Freddie. "You bet they will if there's anything to see. Why, it'll be better than a funeral to them." "Surely," said Mrs. Pettigrew Robinson, "one has a duty in the matter, whatever one's private feelings might be, especially at the present day, when people are so terribly slack." She glanced at the Honourable Freddie. "Oh, don't you mind me, Mrs. P. All I say is, if these blighters make things unpleasant, don't blame me." "Whoever thought of blaming you, Freddie?" said the Duchess. "Manner of speaking." "What do you think, Mr. Murbles?"
"Oh, I feel," said the lawyer, carefully stirring his coffee, "that while your intention is a very admirable one, and does you very great credit, my dear lady, yet Mr. Arbuthnot is right in saying it may involve you in some unpleasant publicity. I have always been a sincere Christian myself, but I cannot feel that our religion demands that we should make ourselves conspicuous in such painful circumstances."
Mr. Parker reminded himself of a dictum of Lord Melbourne. "Well, after all," said Mrs. Marchbanks, "as Helen so rightly says, does it matter? Nobody's really got anything to be ashamed of. There has been a stupid mistake, of course, but I don't see why anybody who wants to shouldn't go to church."
"Certainly not, madame. We might look in ourselves, eh? Take a walk that way, I mean. Come out before the sermon. I think it's a good thing. Shows we don't believe old Denver's done anything wrong."
"You forget, dear, I've promised to stay at home with Mary, poor girl."
"Oh, yes, of course, stupid of me. How is she?"
"She was very restless last night, poor child," said the Duchess. "Perhaps she will get a little sleep this morning. It has been a shock to her, one which may prove a blessing in disguise."
"My dear, I wonder when we shall hear from Sir Impey." "Oh, yes, indeed. I am counting on his influence with the Duke."
"Well, of course. He must speak out for everybody's sake. He must say what he was doing out of doors at that time. Or if he does not, it must be discovered. Dear me, that's what these detectives are for, aren't they?"
"That is their ungrateful task, Mrs. Pettigrew Robinson," said Mr. Parker suddenly. He'd said nothing for so long, everybody jumped.
"There," said Mrs. Marchbanks, "I expect you'll clear it all up in no time, Mr. Parker. Perhaps you've got the real culprit up your sleeve all the time."
"Not quite, but I shall do my best to get him. Besides, I'll probably have some help on the job."
Help? From whom?"
inquired Mr. Pettigrew Robinson.
"Her Grace's brother-in-law." "Peter! Mr. Parker must be amused at the family amateur."
"No, not at all, your Grace. Wimsey would be one of the finest detectives in England, if he wasn't lazy. But we can't get hold of him. I've wired to the last known address, but I don't know if he's still there. He said nothing about when he was coming back to England."
"He's a rummy old bird, but he ought to be here, what? What I mean to say is, if anything happens to old Denver, don't you see, he's the head of the family, ain't he? Till little pickled gherkins comes of age."
In the frightful silence which followed this remark, the sound of a walking-stick being clattered into an umbrella-stand was distinctly audible.
"Who's that, I wonder?"
The door waltzed open.
"Morning, dear old things. How are you all? Hello, Helen. Colonel, you owe me £0.50 since last September year, you know. Morning, Mrs. Marchbanks. Morning, Mrs. P. Well, Mr. Murbles, how do you like this
beastly weather. Oh, don't trouble to get up, Freddie. I'd simply hate to inconvenience you. Parker, old man, what a damned reliable old bird you are. Always on the spot, like that ointment thing. I say, have you all finished? I meant to get up earlier, but I was snoring so Bunter hadn't the heart to wake me up. I nearly blew in last night, but we didn't arrive till 2 a.m., and I thought, well, you wouldn't half bless me if I did. What, Colonel? Oh, aeroplane. Victoria from Paris to London. North-Eastern to Northallerton. Damn bad roads the rest of the way. A puncture just below Riddlesdale. Damn bad bed at the Lord of Glory. So thought I'd blow in for the last sausage here, if I was lucky. What? Sunday morning in an English family and no sausages? God bless my soul. What's the world coming to, Colonel? I say, Helen, old Gerald's been and gone and done it this time, what? What's that now, curry? Thanks, old man. Here, I say, you needn't be so stingy about it. I've been travelling for 3 days on end. Freddie, pass the toast. Beg pardon, Mrs. Marchbanks? Oh, rather, yes. Corsica was perfectly amazing. All black-eyed fellows with knives in their belts and jolly fine-looking girls. Old Bunter had a regular affair with the innkeeper's daughter in one place. Do you know he's an awfully susceptible old beggar? You'd never think it, would you? Jove, I'm hungry, I must say. Helen, I meant to get you some fetching crepe de chine undies from Paris, but I saw that old Parker was getting ahead of me over the bloodstains, so we packed up our things and buzzed off. Mrs. Pettigrew Robinson rose. Theodore, I think we ought to be getting ready for church. I'll order the car. Peter, of course, I'm exceedingly glad to see you. Your leaving no address was most inconvenient. Do ring for anything you want. It's a pity you didn't arrive in time to see Gerald. Oh, that's all right. I'll look him up in quad. You know, it's rather a good idea to keep one's crimes in the family. One has so many more facilities. I'm sorry for poor old Polly, though. How is she? She must not be disturbed today. Oh, no, not a bit of it. She'll keep. Today Parker and I hold high revel. Today he shows me all the bloody footprints. It's all right, Helen, it's not swearing. It's an adjective of quality. I hope they aren't all washed away, are they, old thing? No, I've got most of them under flower pots. Ha ha! Pass for bread and squish. Tell me all about it. The departure of the church-going element had induced a more humanitarian atmosphere. Mrs. Marchbanks stumped off upstairs to tell Mary that Peter had come, and the Colonel lit a large cigar. The Honourable Freddie rose, stretched himself, pulled a leather armchair to the fireside, and sat down with his feet on the brass fender, while Parker marched round and poured himself another cup of coffee. I suppose you've seen the papers? Oh, yes, I've read up on the inquest. You know, if you'll excuse my saying so, I think you rather mucked it up between you all. It was a disgraceful affair, disgraceful. The coroner behaved most improperly. He had no business to give such a summing up. With a jury of ignorant country fellows, what could one expect? And the details that were allowed to come out. If I could have got here earlier... Yes, I'm afraid it was partly my fault, Whimsy. Crakes rather resents me. The chief constable at Stapley sent to us over his head, and when the message came through, I ran along to the chief and asked for a job, because I thought if there should be any misconception or difficulty, you see, you'd just as soon I tackled it as anybody else. But I had a few little arrangements to make about a forgery I've been looking into, and, well, what with one thing and another, I didn't get off till the night express. By the time I turned up on Friday, Crakes and the coroner were already as thick as thieves, and had fixed the inquest for that morning, which was ridiculous, and had arranged to produce their blessed evidence as dramatically as possible. I only had time to skim over the ground, disfigured, I'm sorry to say, by the prints of Crakes and his local ruffians. I really had nothing for the jury. Cheer up, I'm not blaming you. Besides, it lends excitement to the chase. Fact is, you know, we ain't popular with respectable coroners, giddy aristocrats and immoral Frenchmen. I say, Peter, sorry you missed Miss Lydia Cathcart. You'd have loved her, and she's gone back to Golders Green and taken the body with her. Oh, well, I don't suppose there was anything obtrusive about the body. No, the medical evidence was all right as far as it went. He was shot through the lungs, that's all. Though, mind you, he didn't shoot himself. I didn't say anything, not wishing to upset old Denver's story, but you know all that stuff about his being so upset and go to blazes in his manner was all my whiskers. How do you know? Why, my dear man, Cathcart and I toddled up to bed together. I was rather fed up, having dropped a lot on some shares, besides missing everything I shot in the morning.
And I lost a bet I made with the Colonel about the number of toes on the kitchen cat, and I said to Cathcart it was a hell of a damn fool world, or words to that effect. Not a bit of it, he said. It's a damn good world. I'm going to ask Mary for a date tomorrow, and then we'll go and live in Paris, where they understand sex. I said something or other vague, and he went off whistling.
Parker looked grave. Colonel Marchbanks cleared his throat.
Well, there's no accounting for a man like Cathcart. No accounting at all. Brought up in France, you know. Not at all like a straightforward Englishman. Always up and down, up and down. Very sad, poor fellow. Well, Peter, I hope you and Mr. Parker find out something about it. We mustn't have old Denver cooped up in jail like this, you know. Awfully unpleasant for him, poor chap. And with the birds so good this year. Well, I expect you'll be making a tour of inspection, Mr. Parker, eh? What do you say to shoving the balls about a bit, eh, Freddie? Right you are. You'll have to give me 100 there, Colonel. Nonsense, nonsense. You play an excellent game.
Mr. Murbles having withdrawn, Wimsey and Parker faced each other over the remains of the breakfast. Peter, I don't know if I've done the right thing by coming. If you feel...
Look here, old man, let's cut out the considerations of delicacy. We're going to work this case like any other.
If anything unpleasant turns up, I'd rather you saw it than anybody else. It's an uncommonly pretty little case on its merits, and I'm going to put some damn good work into it. Well, if you're sure it's all right.
My dear man, if you hadn't been here, I'd have sent for you. Now, let's get to business. Of course, I'm setting off with the assumption that old Gerald didn't do it. Well, I'm sure he didn't.
No, that isn't your line. There's nothing rash about you, nothing trustful. You are expected to throw cold water on my hopes and doubt all my conclusions. All righto. Where would you like to begin? I think we'll start from Cathcart's bedroom. The bedroom was of moderate size, with a single window overlooking the front room. The bed was on the right-hand side, and the dressing-table before the window. On the left was the fireplace, with an armchair before it, and a small writing-table. Everything's as it was. Craik's had that much sense. Yes, very well. Gerald says that when he charged Cathcart with being a scamp, Cathcart jumped up and nearly knocked the table over. Well, that's the writing-table, so Cathcart was sitting in the armchair. Yes, he was. And he pushed it back violently and rumpled up the carpet. See, yes, so far so good. Now, what was he doing there? He wasn't reading, because there's no book about it, and we know that he rushed straight out of the room and never came back. Very good. Was he writing? No, virgin sheet of blotting paper. He might have been writing in pencil. Well, that's true, old Killjoy, so he might. Well, if he was, he shoved the paper into his pocket when Gerald came in, because it isn't here. But he didn't, because it wasn't found on his body, so he wasn't writing. Unless he threw the paper away somewhere else. I haven't been all over the grounds, you know, and at the smallest computation, if we accept the shot heard by Hawdraw at 11:50 as the shot, there's an hour and a half unaccounted for. Very well, let's say there is nothing to show he was writing. Will that do? Lord Peter drew out a lens and scrutinized the surface of the armchair carefully before sitting down in it. Nothing helpful there. To proceed, Cathcart sat where I am sitting. He wasn't writing? You're sure this room hasn't been touched? Certain? Then he wasn't smoking. Why not? He could have chucked the stub of a cigar or cigarette into the fire when Denver came in. Not a cigarette, or we should find traces somewhere, on the floor or the grate. That light ash blows about so. But a cigar, well, he might have smoked a cigar without leaving a sign, I suppose. But I hope he didn't. Why? Because, old son, I'd rather Gerald's account had some element of truth in it. An early man doesn't sit down to the delicate enjoyment of a cigar before bed and cherish the ash with such scrupulous care. On the other hand, if Freddie's right and Cathcart was feeling unusually sleek and pleased with life, that's just the sort of thing he would do. Do you think Mr. Arbuthnot would have invented that, as a matter of fact? He doesn't strike me in that way. He'd have to be imaginative and spiteful to make it up. I really don't think he's either. I know. I've known old Freddie all my life. He wouldn't hurt a fly. Besides, he simply hasn't the wits to make up that sort of story. But what bothers me is that Gerald most certainly hasn't the wits either to invent that Adelphi drama between him and Cathcart.
On the other hand, if we allow for a moment that he shot Cathcart, he had an incentive to invent it. He'd be trying to get his head out of the... Well, I mean, when anything important is at stake, it is wonderful how it sharpens one's wits. And the story being so far-fetched does rather suggest an unpractised storyteller. True, O King. Well, you've sat on all my discoveries so far. Never mind, my head is bloody but unbowed. Cathcart was sitting here. So your brother said. Oh, curse you! I say he was. At least somebody was. He's left the impression of his sit-me-down upon the cushion. Might have been earlier in the day. Oh, rot! They were out all day. You needn't overdo it, Charles. I say Cathcart was sitting here. Hallo, hallo! He leaned forward and stared into the grate. There's some burnt paper here, Charles. Yeah, I know. I was frightfully excited about that yesterday, but I found it just the same in several of the rooms. They often let the bedroom fires go out when everybody's out during the day, and then relight them about an hour before dinner. There's only the cook, housemaid, and Fleming here, you see, and they've got to do a lot with a large party. But Lord Peter was picking the charred fragments over. I can find nothing to contradict your suggestion, and this fragment of the Morning Post rather confirms it. Well, then, we can only suppose that Cathcart sat here in a brown study, doing nothing at all. That doesn't get us much further, I'm afraid. He got up and went to the dressing-table. I like these tortoise-shell sets, and the perfume is Bessa de Soie. Very nice, too. New to me, must draw Bunter's attention to it. A charming manicure set, isn't it? You know, I like being clean and all that, but Cathcart was the kind of man who always impressed you as being just a little too well turned out. Poor devil, and he'll be buried at Golders Green, after all. I only saw him once or twice, you know. Can't understand Mary taking to him. But then I know really awfully little about her. You see, she's 5 years younger than me. When the war broke out, she'd just left school and gone to a place in Paris. I joined up. She came back, did nursing and social work, so I only saw her occasionally. At that time she was rather taken up with new schemes for putting the world to rights, and a lot to say to me. She'd got hold of some pacifist fellow who was a bit of a stunner, I fancy. Then I was ill, you know, and after I got the chuck from Barbara, I didn't feel much like bothering about other people's heart-to-hearts. Then I got mixed up in the Attenbury diamond case, and the result is I know uncommonly little about my own sister, and it looks as though her taste in men has altered. I know my mother said Cathcart had charm. That means he was attractive to women, I suppose. No man can see what makes that in another man, but mother is usually right. What's become of the fellow's papers? He left very little here. There's a cheque-book on Cox's Charing Cross branch, but it's a new one, so not very helpful. Apparently he only kept a small current account with them for convenience when he was in England. The cheques are mostly to self, with the occasional hotel or tailor. Any passbook? I think all his important papers are in Paris. He has a flat there, somewhere near the river, I believe. We're in communication with the Paris police. He had a room in Albany. I've told them to lock it up till I get there. I thought of running up to town tomorrow. Yes, you'd better. Any pocket-book? Oh, yes. Here you are. About 30 in various notes. A wine merchant's card, and a bill for a pair of riding breeches. No correspondence? Not a line. No. He was the kind, I imagine, that didn't keep private letters. Much too good an instinct of self-preservation. I asked the servants about his letters, as a matter of fact. They said he got a good number, but never left them about. They couldn't tell me much about the ones he wrote, because all outgoing letters are dropped into the post-bag, which is carried down to the post office, as it is, and opened there, or handed over to the postman when or if he calls. The general impression was that he didn't write much. The housemaid said she never found anything to speak of in the waste-paper basket. Well, that's uncommonly helpful. Wait a moment. Here's his fountain pen. Very handsome. Onoto, with complete gold casing. Dear me. Entirely empty. Well, I don't know that one can deduce anything from that exactly. I don't see a pencil about, by the way. I'm inclined to think you're wrong in supposing that he was writing letters. I didn't suppose anything. I dare say you're right. Lord Peter left the dressing-table, looked through the contents of the wardrobe, and turned over the 2 or 3 books on the pedestal beside the bed. La Rotisserie de la Riant Piduquet, De Nato d'Amethyst, South Wind. Our young fellow works out very true to type. Is there anything else in this room I ought to look at? I don't think so. Where do you like to go now? Follow 'em down. Oh, wait, Jeff. Who are in the other rooms? No, let's see. Oh, yes, of course, here's Gerald's room. Helen's at church. We'll follow 'em down. Oh, wait, Jeff. Who are in the other rooms? Oh, yes, here's Gerald's room. Well, Helen's at church, so in we go. Well, of course, this has been dusted and cleaned up, generally ruined for purposes of observation. I'm afraid so. I could hardly keep the Duchess out of her bedroom. No. Here's the window Gerald shouted out of. Nothing in the grate here, naturally. The fire's been lit since. I say, I wonder where Gerald did put that letter. To Freeborn's, I mean. Nobody's been able to get a word out of him about it. Old Mr. Murbles had a fearful time of him. The Duke insists simply that he destroyed it. Mr. Murbles says that's absurd. So it is. If he was going to bring that sort of accusation against his sister's fiancé, he'd want some evidence of method in his madness, wouldn't he? Or is he one of those Roman brothers who simply says, as head of a family, I forbid the banns, that's enough? Gerald is a good, clean, decent, thoroughbred public schoolboy, and a shocking ass, but I don't think he's as medieval as that. But if he has the letter, why not produce it? Why, indeed. Letters from old college friends in Egypt aren't, as a rule, compromising. You don't suppose this Mr. Freeborn referred in his letter to any, entanglements which your brother, wouldn't wish the Duchess to know about? Lord Peter paused, while absently examining a row of boots. That's an idea. There were occasions, mild ones, but Helen would make the most of them. Still, when it comes to the gallows... You suppose, Whimsy, that your brother really contemplates the gallows? Well, I think Murbles put it to him pretty straight. Well, quite so, but does he actually realise imaginatively that it is possible to hang an English peer for murder on circumstantial evidence? Imagination is not Gerald's strong point. I suppose they do hang peers. They can't be beheaded on Tower Hill or anything. I'll look it up, but they certainly hanged Earl Ferrers in 1760. Did they, though? Ah, well, as the old pagan said of the Gospels, after all, it was a long time ago. Let's hope it wasn't true. It's true enough, and he was dissected and anatomized afterwards. Oh, that part of the treatment is obsolete. We'll tell Gerald about it. Persuade him to take the matter seriously. Which are the boots he wore Wednesday night? These. The fools cleaned them. Yes. Oh, a good heavy lace-up boot. The sort that sends the blood to the head. He wore leggings, too, these. Rather elaborate preparations for a stroll in the garden. But, as you were just going to say, the night was wet. I must ask Helen if Gerald ever suffered from insomnia. I did. She said she thought not as a rule, but that he occasionally had toothache, which made him restless. It wouldn't send him out of doors on a cold night, though. Well, let's go downstairs. They passed through the billiard-room, where the Colonel was making a sensational break, and into the small conservatory which led from it. Lord Peter looked gloomily round at the chrysanthemums and boxes of bulbs. These damn flowers look jolly healthy. Do you mean you've been letting the gardener swarm in here every day to water 'em? Yes, I did. But he had strict orders only to walk on those mats. Good. Take 'em up. Let's get to work. With his lens to his eye, he crawled cautiously over the floor. They all came through this way, I suppose? Yes, I've identified most of the marks. People went in and out. Here's the Duke. He comes in from outside. He trips over the body. Parker had opened the outer door and lifted some matting to show a trampled patch of gravel, discoloured with blood. He kneels by the body. Here are his knees and toes. Afterwards he goes into the house, through the conservatory, leaving a good impression in black mud and gravel just outside the door. It's lucky the gravel's so soft here. Yes, it's just a patch. The gardener tells me it gets trampled and messy just here owing to his coming in to fill the cans from the water trough.
They fill the trough from a well every so often and then carry the water away in cans. It got extra bad this year, so they put down fresh gravel a few weeks ago. Pity they didn't extend their labours all down the path while they were about it." Peter was now balancing himself precariously on a small piece of sacking. "Well, that bears out old Gerald so far. Here's an elephant been over this bit of a box border. Who's that?"
"Oh, that's a constable. I put him at 18 stone. He's nothing. And this rubber sole with a patch on it, that's Craik's. He's all over the place. This squelchy-looking thing is Mr. Arbuthnot in bedroom slippers, and the galoshes are Mr. Pettigrew Robinson. We can dismiss all those. But now here, just coming over the threshold, is a woman's foot in a strong shoe. I make that out to be Lady Mary's. Here it is again, just at the edge of the wall. She's come out to examine the body." "Quite so. And then she came in again, with a few grains of red gravel on her shoes. Well, that's all right. Hello!" On the outer side of the conservatory were some shelves for small plants, and beneath these a damp and dismal bed of earth, occupied, in a sprawling and lackadaisical fashion, by stringy cactus plants and a sporadic growth of maidenhair fern, masked by a row of large chrysanthemums in pots. "What have you got?" inquired Parker, seeing his friend peering into this green retreat. Lord Peter withdrew his long nose from between two pots and said, "Who put what down here?" Parker hastened to the place. There, among the cacti, was certainly the clear mark of some oblong object with corners that had been stood out of sight on the earth behind the pots. "It's a good thing Gerald's gardener ain't one of those conscientious blighters that can't even let a cactus alone for the winter, or he'd have tenderly lifted those little drooping heads. Oh, damn and blast the beastly plant for a crimson porcupine! You measure it." 2.5 feet by 6 inches, and fairly heavy, for it's sunk in and broken the plants about. Was it a bar of anything? I fancy not. The impression is deeper on the farther side. I think it was something bulky set up on the edge and leaned against the glass. If you ask me for my private opinion, I should guess that it was a suitcase. A suitcase? Why a suitcase? Why, indeed. I think we may assume that it did not stay here very long. It would have been exceedingly visible in the daytime. But somebody might very well have shoved it here, if they were caught with it, say at 3 o'clock in the morning, and didn't want it to be seen. Then when did they take it away? Almost immediately, I should say, before daylight. Or even Inspector Craik's could hardly have failed to see it. It's not the doctor's bag, I suppose? No, unless the doctor's a fool. I mean, why put a bag conveniently in a damp and dirty place out of the way, when every law of sense and convenience would urge him to pop it down handy by the body? No. Unless Craik's or the gardener had been leaving things about, this was thrust away there on Wednesday night by Gerald. Or by Cathcart. Or, I suppose, by Mary. Nobody else could be supposed to have anything to hide. Yes, one person. Who's that? The person unknown. Well, who's he? For answer, Mr. Parker proudly stepped to a row of wooden frames carefully covered with matting. Stripping this away with the air of a bishop unveiling a memorial, he disclosed a V-shaped line of footprints. These belong to nobody I've ever seen or heard, I mean. Hooray! Then downwards from the steep hill's edge they tracked the footmarks small. Only they are rather large. We can't track these. It's more a case of they followed from the earthy bank those footsteps one by one into the middle of the plank, and farther there were none. Great poet Wordsworth! How often I've had that feeling! Now let's see. These footmarks. A man's number 10 with worn-down heels and a patch on the left in the side. They advance from a hard bit of path which shows no footmarks. They come to the body here, where that pool of blood is. Now, I say that odd, don't you think? No? Well, perhaps not. There are no footmarks under the body. I suppose we can't say it's such a mess. Well, the unknown gets so far. Here's a footmark deeply pressed in. Was he just going to throw Cathcart into the well? He hears a sound, he starts, he turns, he runs, on tiptoe, into the shrubbery. By Jove! Yes,
The tracks come out of one of those green paths in the wood, but there's an end to them. Well, we'll follow them later. Where did they come from?" Together the two friends followed the path away from the house. The gravel, except for the little patch before the conservatory, was old and hard, and afforded but little trace, particularly as the last few days had been rainy. Parker, however, was able to assure Wimsey that there had definitely been traces of dragging and bloodstains. What sort of bloodstains? Smears? Yes, smears mostly. There were pebbles displaced, too, all the way. And now here is something odd. It was the clear impression of the palm of a man's hand, heavily pressed into the earth of a herbaceous border, the fingers pointing towards the house. On the path the gravel had been scraped up in 2 long furrows. There was blood on the grass border between the path and the bed, and the edge of the grass was broken and trampled. "I don't like that. Ugly, isn't it? Poor devil. He made a determined effort to hang on here. That explains the blood by the conservatory door. But what kind of a devil drags a corpse that isn't quite dead?" A few yards farther the path ran to the main drive. This was bordered with trees widening into a thicket. At the point of intersection of the two paths were some further indistinct marks, and in another 20 yards or so they turned aside into the thicket. A large tree had grown there at some time and made a little clearing, in the midst of which a tarpaulin had been carefully spread and pegged down. The air was heavy with the smell of fungus and fallen leaves. "Scene of a tragedy," said Parker briefly, rolling back the tarpaulin. Lord Peter gazed down sadly. Muffled in an overcoat and a thick grey scarf, he looked, with his long, narrow face, like a melancholy adjutant stork. The writhing body of a fallen man had scraped up the dead leaves and left a depression in the sodden ground. At one place the darker earth showed where a great pool of blood had soaked into it, and the yellow leaves of a Spanish poplar were rusted with no autumnal stain. "That's where they found the handkerchief and revolver. I looked for finger marks, but the rain and mud messed everything up." Wimsey took out his lens, lay down, and conducted a personal tour of the whole space slowly on his stomach, Parker moving mutely after him. "He paced up and down for some time. He wasn't smoking. He was turning something over in his mind, or waiting for somebody. What's this? Aha, here's our number 10 foot again. Coming in through the trees on the farther side. No signs of a struggle. Oh, that's odd. Cathcart was shot up close, wasn't he? Yes, singed his shirt front. Quite so. So why does he stand still to be shot at? I imagine he had an appointment with number 10 Boots, somebody he knew, who could get close without arousing suspicion. Then the interview was a friendly one, on Cathcart's side anyway. But the revolver is a difficulty. How did number 10 get hold of Gerald's revolver? The conservatory door was open. Well, nobody knew about that except Gerald and Fleming. Besides, do you mean to tell me that number 10 walked in here, went to the study, fetched a revolver, walked back here and shot Cathcart? Seems a clumsy method. If he wanted to do any shooting, why didn't he come armed in the first place? It seems more probable Cathcart brought the revolver. Then why no signs of struggle? Perhaps Cathcart shot himself. Then why should number 10 drag him into a conspicuous position and run away? Wait a minute. How's this? Number 10 has an appointment with Cathcart, to blackmail him, let's say. He somehow gets word of his intention to him between 9:45 and 10:15. That would account for the alteration in Cathcart's manner, and allow both Mr. Arbuthnot and the Duke to be telling the truth. Cathcart rushes violently out after this row with your brother, and he comes down here to keep his appointment. He paces up and down, waiting for number 10. Number 10 arrives and parleys with Cathcart. Cathcart offers him money. Number 10 stands out for more. Cathcart says he hasn't got any more, really hasn't got it. Number 10 says in that case he blows the gaff. Cathcart retorts, in that case you can go to the devil. I'm going there myself. Cathcart, who's previously got hold of a revolver, shoots himself. Number 10 is seized with remorse. He sees that Cathcart isn't quite dead. He picks him up, part drags, part carries him to the house. He's smaller than Cathcart, not very strong. He finds it a hard job. They've just got to the conservatory door when Cathcart has a final hemorrhage and gives up the ghost. Number 10 becomes aware that his position in somebody else's grounds, alone with a corpse at 3 a.m., wants explaining. So he drops Cathcart and bolts. Enter the Duke of Denver and falls over the body. Tableau. Well, that's good, that's very good, but when do you suppose it happened? Gerald found the body at 3 a.m. The doctor was here at 4:30, and said that Cathcart had been dead several hours. Very well. Now, how about that shot my sister heard at 3 o'clock? Oh, look here, old man. I don't want to appear rude to your sister, but may I put it like this? I suggest that shot at 3 a.m. was poachers. Poachers? By all means. Well, really, Parker, I think that hangs together. Let's adopt that explanation provisionally. The first thing to do is now find number 10, since he can bear witness that Cathcart committed suicide. And that, as far as my brother is concerned, is the only thing that matters a rap. But for the satisfaction of my own curiosity, I should like to know what was number 10 blackmailing Cathcart about? Who hid a suitcase in the conservatory? And what was Gerald doing in the garden at 3 a.m.? Well, suppose we begin by tracing where number 10 came from. "Hi, hi!" cried Whimsy as they returned to the trail. "Here's something! Here's a real treasure trove, Parker!" From amid the mud and the fallen leaves he retrieved a tiny, glittering object, a flash of white and green between his fingertips. It was a little charm such as women hang upon a bracelet, a diminutive diamond cat, with eyes of bright emerald.